The post-war world, restoring the cities, holding trials of the Nazis, ruminating as the cause of the past catastrophe. Meanwhile, German and American specialists make a thorough search of Germany's most sinister site, with a spear outline formed by the Teutoburg Forest, the Externsteiner Rocks, and the Wilvesberg Castle. A most horrendous find was made in the castle's northern tower, found in a 20-square-meter crypt. Under the burial chamber of SS leaders were 12 churned human skeletons. On their crooked fingers, they wore rings made of metal of unknown origin, rings untouched by decay and fire. The remnants were arranged in such a way as to form the outline of a spear directed towards the east. All these details were entered into reports. Later were called the Case of 12 Apostles. The documents remained top secret for 60-odd years. Only in 2007, this investigation in Wilvesberg came to the surface. Wilvesberg was the center of a utopian state, headed by Heinrich Himmler, who once described himself as the recurrent man. While the black SS divisions moved eastward, burning down villages, crushing kids and women with their tanks, Himmler dreamingly walked around the rooms here in half-darkness, his figure so full of grandeur in the dim light of the torches. Wilvesberg Castle had no mirrors, lest in daylight Himmler could see his own reflection, a short man with pale face and rotten teeth, a fair-haired demigod of the Black Order, just a human capsule containing someone else. For supreme creatures can take any form at all. Such was Himmler's explanation of his poor appearance. He kept shy of bright light of crowded assemblies and meetings at the General Staff HQ. He was never seen on rostrums. At balls and receptions, like an evil spirit, he loomed behind Hitler. Colonel General Guderian described him as some transcendental creature close to the Führer. And it was rumored that Himmler wasn't a human. So who was he? In early May 1945, when Hitler was dead and Germany was occupied by Allies, Reichsfuhrer Himmler didn't even try to hide himself. European countries have no future without me. They'll have to accept me as Minister of European Police for their own good. Otherwise, communist chaos will obtain on the earth. Words of someone who was above any illusions. In spring 1945, Himmler still controlled vast North European territories. He possessed a huge arsenal of modern weapons. He had vaults full of gold and currency. And he headed the highly organized SS, ready for all kinds of political metamorphosis. We now know from the archives that in April 1945, Himmler had a clear-cut plan. He was ready to issue a command for the SS machine to fulfill the greatest mission, something Hitler had failed to do. In other words, to save the world from Bolshevism.
Himmler knew that he was meant to become a scapegoat, that he was to answer for the failure of the great German idea. Having no supporters in Germany, he sought support from Western democracy and from supernatural powers.
In early May 1945, donning a threadbare suit in the company of his secretary and doctor, Himmler mingled with a crowd of refugees, trying to get to the tomb of Henry I, or Henry the Fowler. He did that, risking his life, losing precious time. For before seeing Field Marshal Montgomery, Himmler needed to receive a sign. Andrei Vasilchenko, historian.
In late 19th, early 20th centuries, Germany embraced occultism. which was a reaction to rigid rationalization of late 18th, early 19th centuries. It was a swing of pendulum. Himmler was among those who was interested in occultism and esoteric scientists. From his childhood, he believed he could contact the other world.
The year 1919, Germany, after losing World War I, was seeing the time of wholesale strife. Bavaria was in the hands of communists. Anti-communist resistance was led by Baron von Sabatendorf, leader of the secret Thule Society. According to legend, Thule was capital of Hyperborea, inhabited by Luciferites, messengers of the Pole Star. Aryans, Luciferites, descendants, were said to possess the genetic memory of their forefathers. Mystical power passed from one generation to another.
The Thule Society leaders were very active politicians. Out of two small parties, they formed NSDAP, and their sacral teachings they presented as political propaganda. That made them a militant organization, albeit a sacral one, acting under the veil of secrecy.
The German society, bereaved of spiritual ideals, was waiting for a messiah, someone who would become their German son. And the black sun had risen. The Thule Society named the one who embodied the sun, Adolf Hitler. National exaltation with which Hitler's ideology was received can't be explained rationally. The power of Hitler's magnetism lied in the fact that national subconscious was awoken. Its constructive and destructive elements. It seemed a promise of German Renaissance, came from nature itself, from hidden historical secrets and celestial powers. The young Heinrich Himmler embraced that faith too. His childhood was quite boring, but the date of his birth bespoke some promise. "I'm the peer of the 20th century," he wrote. He was born on October 7th, 1900, to a family of a teacher and greengrocer's daughter. His childhood passed in a small Bavarian town, Landshut. Heinrich's father was a devoted Catholic, a very masterful person who demanded from his children to stick to the book of religious norms. He also would oftentimes beat up his sons.
Father's image was imprinted in his consciousness. He wanted to be like his father, to beat others, to feel no pain. Such was his primitive ideal.
There was a big library in their house. Of an evening, father would read aloud ancient legends and tales of chivalry to his sons. Words of duty, honor, and loyalty were sounded.
It was pain and humiliation for Heinrich, but at the same time, rich imagination and lofty ideals. His aspiration now was not just to excel in some profession. No, he was after such more. The word was to transcend. And this is quite dangerous. We're dealing here with very high self-rating on the one hand and a very primitive life plan on the other.
When World War I broke out, he was too young to go to war. Though it was his dream, he entered sub-officer school. But soon the war was over. He was enrolled in the Freikorps, where he mingled with soldiers and officers of the defeated Wehrmacht. They were not simply embittered by that defeat. On the contrary, it was not a defeat in their opinion. They talked about conspiracy of anti-German forces inside Germany, Jews, Social Democrats, and Communists. Unlike other young people, Himmler was not politicized. He was a bourgeois child. He loved organized life. He had to think about his future. He finished agronomy faculty at the Institute of Technology. He now grew medicinal herbs and prided himself in being an agronomist experimentalist. He even joined the movement, Arteman League Haas, a back-to-the-land movement. The green motif later became popular at NSDAP. Himmler, the Reichsfuhrer's remarks in documents were made with green pencil, though Hitler and others used red pencil.
It's all about strength and symbolism, and Himmler's choice of the color green is very symptomatic. He was a man of symbols, like, I'm short and puny, but I wear a ring with a big diamond. And my swastika is made of gold. Yes, I'm Mr. Green Pencil. Such was his message, that he was all-important, a stooping, nearsighted creature with rotten teeth. Still inside, he was a god. And I think that was what his subordinates thought of him.
In the early 20s, Hitler was planning a coup, recruiting followers with utmost care. They all came through a checkup. His deputy, Gregor Strasser, has a secretary, Himmler. This name sounds appealing to Hitler's friend, Rudolf Haas, and he likes the bearer of the name too, a quiet and industrious person. The proprietor of the Hofbraukeller always had a small hall for Hitler's convenience. One day, Haas brought Himmler here. He looked like a mustached rat, his head set on a thin neck. On the nail of his left ring finger, a Nogiz rune, so popular among the Nazis. Haas introduced Himmler as a candidate for a standard bearer of stormtroopers, and the lad began to talk about symbols. Everyone's interest was aroused when, like a conjurer, the youngster produced a red piece of cloth. Emblazoned inside a white circle was a black swastika. Back in the 1920s, it was a new symbol, and the Nazis were enchanted and hypnotized by it.
They were a nation who had lost all possible wars. And now this Aryan symbol, how could they convince German workers or peasants that they should take to arms again? Leaders had to find motivations so dear to common people, connected with their daily labor. The leaders couldn't formulate such motivations. They could only turn people into zombies. That's a usual trick of hypnotizers.
Even Ernst Röhm, leader of the Storm Battalion, was mesmerized by that trick. The flag of Adolf Hitler, cried out Himmler in a thin voice and spread the banner like a tablecloth before Hitler. Röhm turned, crimson from anger. But Haas said that the Führer needed to have a Leibwaffe with their own banner, containing all the main symbols. As for stormtroopers, with their own mission, well, Himmler has prepared a logo for AS too.
So that mustached youngster, hiding his eyes from Rome, took out a black triangle depicted on which was the skull and bones. Angered by this outrageous escapade, as Haas reminisces, Röhm grabbed Himmler, took him out to the corridor, and gave him a good dusting.
But Himmler was used to being beaten. He calmly waited till the end of the meeting and was rewarded by Hitler's hearty slap on the shoulder. And Haas said for Röhm to hear, "I swear, Adolf, you will have the Praetorian Guard." Another checkup was in 1923, during the beer hall putsch. Himmler marched with a banner in front of the column, invulnerable to bullets. The third checkup was patience. Hitler in prison, his party outlawed. Himmler received his first post only 5 years thereafter.
Reichsfuhrer was not such a big post. He was one of the 200 men all around Germany who guarded the Fuhrer and were answerable before AS. Himmler was just a Reichsfuhrer.
But only formally. The game was ruled by people who were the closest to Hitler. So Himmler did the following. He reinforced discipline in his small army, got rid of drunkards and criminals, and introduced drills instead of beer parties. He also made SS uniforms, distinct from SA ones. Previously, SS men wore brown shirts like an SA, only their ties and caps were black. But now Himmler introduced a black ensemble, a jacket, breeches, and a cap with a death's head insignia. A curious documented detail. The first SS uniform was made by Munich's best tailor, who was a Jew. Now Himmler introduced rigid rules to join the SS. You had to be of age from 25 to 35, fair-haired, from 175 centimeters tall, proportionally built. You also had to prove your ancestral Aryan purity, starting from the year 1650. SS men had extraordinary privileges. They were exempt from military service. They could not be tried by civil courts. They were entitled to have duels and to commit suicide.
At first, the SS was meant to be an elite military organization with a uniform of their own and with honor daggers having an inscription, "My honor is my loyalty." After the Nazi came to power, from a military organization, the SS gradually turned into an elite religious order, made in the fashion of knights' orders.
The SS emblem was now two sig runes, a symbol of power, energy, and victory. Sonnenrad, or the Sunwheel Swastika, a symbol of fire of the Aryan Magi. The runic letter Tyr, a symbol of warriors' valor, adorned the tombs of SS men instead of a Christian cross. Hakenkreuz rune, or right-facing swastika, symbolizes resurrection and eternal existence. The SS order had several circles of initiates. The master's closest circle consisted of 12 persons, 12 apostles, as Himmler called them. You will not find among them familiar names, Ober or Gruppenführers. That was a list of a special kind. A number 5 in the list was a certain Weistor. It was an alias which meant prophet. The man's real name was Karl Maria Willigut.
Willigut was considered a bearer of German kingship. There were stories connected with this. At the end of World War I, Willigut was in a convalescence camp, and it was then that a Catholic delegation arrived there, headed by Cardinal Ratti. Willigut simple-heartedly narrated his family legend, and one general, a Jesuit, whispered to the cardinal, "Damned family."
In occult and esoteric circles of Germany, Willigut was considered a descendant of royal family and bearer of secret knowledge, Ermin Saga. This knowledge could not be opened to anyone, but Willigut had broken an oath.
The Williguts were thought to be persecuted because some secret knowledge was passed by them from generation to generation. Knowledge inscribed on wooden tablets arranged into a book. In the 19th century, these tablets had been lost, but Willigut and his father had been restoring that knowledge.
So Willigut explained to the Reichsfuhrer that runic knowledge. In particular, it described how to surpass human will. We can judge about the progress of German scientists in decoding the Ermin Saga by the sketches of the so-called techno-magical machines. You can see on them a lot of Villagut's remarks. The world's leading countries already were considering a possibility of creating psychotropic weapons. Karl Maria Villigut became Himmler's spiritual advisor and was commissioned to find a site for a ritual center where Himmler could hide himself from Hitler and party intrigues. In Westphalia, at eXtranews Rocks, there were once sanctuaries of fire worshippers. Nearby was the Teutoburg forest, where, according to legend, in the beginning of the new era, the German chieftain Arminius defeated 3 Roman legions. The rocks and the wood and the residence of the ancient noble family Buren, the Wilvesburg Castle, formed the outline of a spear pointing to the east. Prompted by nature herself, Himmler ordered Villigut to redesign the castle for the purposes of the order.
The Wewelsburg is, forget the sepsis, a very unusual place. Within its walls, for some reason, your body temperature falls to 35.6. It's a registered fact. Its atmosphere is somewhat mystical, paralyzing your will. In his letters to Himmler, Villigut insisted that the Wewelsburg was the right place to experiment with time and space warps.
In the castle's northern towers, the researchers discovered a sanctuary, a crypt dedicated to the deceased SS leaders. Over the crypt, there was a chamber of the SS leaders where Himmler had intended to install an Arthurian round table, seating 12, the most honorable knights of the SS. In the center, there was a podium. The documents explained its purpose. To sit on it was the Holy Grail. The mystic writer Otto Rahn did the quest for the Grail, and through historical research associated its location with the Cathars sect, the followers of the Luciferites. They also did the quest for the Spear of Destiny. It was said to be once owned by Henry the Fowler, and Himmler was his reincarnation. Once, this spear stopped invaders from the east, so now another Henry was to fulfill the same mission. Hitler was tolerant to Himmler's mystic activities because the SS were battle-worthy, loyal, and well-organized, unlike Rahm's independent SA. The SS played the key role in purging SA's leadership. During the Night of Long Knives of July 30th, 1934, several hundreds of SA leaders were killed. Many of them had ridiculed Himmler. Among the victims was his personal foe, Ernst Röhm. Starting from 1934, Himmler already controlled all concentration camps, and in 1936 he laid his hands on Gestapo, the state secret police. By that time, the SS was numbered, several hundreds of thousands of people. Inconspicuously, Himmler had turned his order into a state within a state, with his own symbols, morale, science, and religion.
There were several opinions as to what kind of religion Himmler tried to revive. Some say it was paganism, yet others that it was esotericism. But in my mind, he tried to revive some proto-religion, a religion which existed before paganism. So to say, some pre-testamental Christianity. Neither Himmler nor his apostles talked about paganism or esotericism. They all talked about proto-religion.
In 1936, under Luftwaffe's auspices, the so-called rocket program was launched. The young engineer, Werner von Braun, was to pick up sites for testing ranges, which he did. But suddenly, Himmler's SS stepped in and named a site for test, Rügen Island, where once there stood Arkona, temple of the god Schwantovit. And where since 1935, SS scientists had been drilling huge wells looking for the proof of the hollow Earth theory. After protestations of engineers, Himmler named Usedom Island. In its northern part, there was a fishing village called Peenemünde. All that region of the Baltic was considered sacred by Himmler's specialists, because once it was the center of Aryan Christianity. But besides the mystical aspect, Himmler never forgot about concrete tasks of the Reich. He always had interesting approaches, and that was what Hitler liked him for. The demographic problem in Germany was very acute in the 1930s. At this junction, Himmler stepped in with his ideas. Earlier, he had offered for the SS members a special ceremony of copulation. The newly married SS men had to deflower their young wives on the graves of old German cemeteries. Thus, it was thought, reincarnation of old-time German heroes was guaranteed. But SS couples were not enough to boost up the birth rate. And so, the Black Corps daily published the list of graves, which they guaranteed were racially pure. Following this, other papers, too, advertised this new form of making love, with a list of reliable cemeteries and graves attached. These publications triggered off a mass campaign of young people making love at the cemeteries. Bourgeois Fräuleins now stopped being so shy.
It was psychological manipulation, or PR in modern parlance, or simply brainwashing people. Say there's a young girl and lad loving each other, and, of course, they're both shy. They have to overcome some barriers, some taboos. Himmler's was a most extreme approach. He behaved like a guru, saying to these young people, I permit you to do this. It's good for your country, and it's not dangerous.
Himmler was breeding the master race like a farmer breeding select animals. As per the Reichsfuhrer's instruction, select women were to have Nordic appearance, be well learned in history and foreign languages, be good horseback riders, good swimmers, car riders. They had to handle weapons, be good cooks and housewives. Himmler got married in 1927 to Magda, his 7 years senior. She gave birth to a girl, Gudrun. The couple saw each other rarely. Later, Himmler also had a mistress, and she gave birth to 2 children. He was on good relations with both women, and he had prepared something very special for his Black Order.
Its members should be not only an elite military organization, not only a religious order, they should belong to a select human species. This selection project of breeding an SS human species was represented by organization Lebensborn, or Spring of Life. Lebensborn was meant to help Germany in dealing with demographical decline.
Организация планировалась как некий союз, который должен был помочь.
But by the years 1938 to 1939, Lebensborn began to develop other features. According to Himmler, Lebensborn children were a new human breed, SS breed.
Braunen Kolonnen der SA, die Schwarzen der SS, der SS, der Führer ruft, gleich sind sie da, von Nord, von Süd, von Ost und West.
A column of SA in brown uniforms marching. SS people are wearing black uniforms. They will all come if summoned by Hitler, from north, south, east, west, northwest of Germany, Westphalia. November 27th, 1939, the castle of Wilvelsburg. In the center, under the swastika, pierced with a dagger, there's a stone podium. Lying thereon is an infant in swaddles. Next to it, a chalice, a silver spoon, and a blue ribbon. Around the podium, hierarchs of the Black Order, Himmler and the infant's parents. The guardian ties the ribbon around the baby and makes a special ritual knot. Then he takes the chalice, the spoon, and says ritual words. May this blue ribbon of loyalty stream along your life. A gulp from this chalice binds you with the Aryan God, and this spoon will nourish you until you grow up. Such was a beginning of the special ceremony, of the name-giving ceremony. Another of Himmler's elite projects was a study society for intellectual ancient history, the Ahnenerbe, which controlled traditional and parallel sciences. The Ahnenerbe supported museums, scientific expeditions.
The SS expedition to Tibet, headed by Ernst Schaeffer, had in mind the existence of Ermin Saga, which said that god Balder Krestos, after being delivered from death, fled to Tibet, where he founded a unique white civilization. So Ernst Schaeffer's expedition was looking for any traces of that civilization. The measures they did and their questionnaires testified to the fact they were not only interested in linguistics or botany, but they were also looking for traces of ancient civilization.
The Society's laboratories remained a mystery because most of the documents were destroyed, but some of them survived. One of the Institute's projects was based on ancient esoteric traditions, like the man possesses some hidden spiritual odic force. Its two poles activated, it may cause objects moving, pendulums swinging, and questions self-answered. Odic force answers for man's creative activity, intuition, and revelations. The lower the body temperature, the stronger the force, and that was the basis of experiments.
It was the experiments of the sadist, Dr. Sigmund Rascher, experiments connected with exposure to cold. They seem senseless for the army or for the Luftwaffe, but if we remember Himmler's belief in odic forces, these sinister experiments acquire some logic. Odic powers in human were awoken by low temperature, low body temperature.
It was rumored that Himmler's alchemists had extracted the mythical metal orichalcum, mentioned by Plato in his dialogues about Atlantis. It is said the hierarchs of the Black Order had orichalcum rings. Historians still marvel at the quickness with which the Order wove their web all around the country, infiltrating the government and all spheres of life. From 1941, Hitler entrusted Himmler with another task: to uphold order in Eastern territories. For this purpose, special units, Einsatzgruppen, were formed, with a license of quick result operations, mass shooting of people. It was a hard and dirty job. To do this and to remain an honorable person, it made us stronger. It was a glorious page in our history, wrote Himmler. Another document introduced on tortures carried out indoors. Paragraph 8. Prisoner should be lying on his stomach, to be hit with 25-kilogram weights in order to cause profound bleeding from his mouth, nose, and ears. And on the margins, characteristic rankings made by Himmler's green pencil. To exclude physical contact, a wide wooden board should be put on the prisoner's back.
I doubt very much that Himmler was so concerned about the prisoners, but he really took care of his staff. It's a fashionable theme today, professional burning. Back then it was very acute, especially in Gestapo and SS, though the term proper didn't exist at the time. Himmler was a good organizer. He did everything for his staff to work comfortably, selflessly, and loyally, and with no professional burning.
In winter 1941, after defeat near Moscow, Hitler demanded to accelerate the purge of inferior nations. "May terror and hate sweep over the world," wrote Hitler. He also wrote that the Reich should get rid of all necessary mouths. And Himmler turned his attention to Höss's old fantasies about relocation of all Jews to Madagascar. He even wrote a plan, a utopia, though because, step by step, Allies were recapturing ocean communications. Another plan was to relocate all Jews to Poland.
Frank, Poland's governor, was indignant. He came to Hitler and said, "What's going on? My task was to people Poland with Germans, and now you want to people it with German Jews." So instead, they opened death camps.
In summer 1944, Heinrich Himmler became a #1 figure of the Third Reich. As commander of the Waffen-SS, he possessed a huge army. 38 divisions equipped with the best armaments. But alongside, with this real power in his hands, Himmler was turning into a sinister, invisible creature. He didn't show himself at any gatherings. The world was immersed in bloodshed, but Himmler had retired to transcendental spheres, hidden inside the Velvesberg. It was rumored that Knights of the Black Order already greeted his master with the words, "Heil Himmler."
Дело в том, что СС обладали собственной экономикой.
The SS had their own economy, ideology, and religion.
В перспективе, я предполагаю, они должны были обладать и собственной
I think that in the perspective, they would have had their own territory, Westphalia.
Ушел из жизни Гитлер.
After Hitler committed suicide and Germany's fall was a matter of days.
Германия падет буквально в какие-то дни.
Himmler did not even intend to hide himself.
Распространенной версии не попытался скрыться.
He was preparing himself for a great mission, to take Hitler's place, to continue the fight. Real job will begin when cannons stop sounding. Did he mean the SS as the main force, to confront the USSR? Absolutely. And he said that straight, from Himmler's letter to Field Marshal Montgomery. "By declining my services, you'll have Europe divided into two camps, the civilized world and the Bolsheviks." Before taking up their new mission, the SS needed absolution by fire. Archives and evidence were burned, and dangerous witnesses too. Heaps of dead people were lying, waiting near crematoriums. Einsatzgruppen commanders grumbled that dead bodies were burning too slowly, and the ash which they scattered on the roadsides was too slowly absorbed, its black ribbons prominent against green fields. Himmler had prepared himself and his Black Order for another sacred mission, which not only demanded material resources, but higher spiritual forces. A sphere where Himmler dwelt all the time. Before petitioning to higher forces, the Black Order had to offer a sacrifice. In 1949, in the Northern Tower, right under the chapel where the SS leaders were interred, there were discovered remains of 12 burnt people. Who were those people? Maybe those 12 apostles of proto-religion who had embraced Ermin Saga knowledge.
It is deemed unaccepted to write about that offering because it doesn't fit into the picture of cowardly villains who had killed millions of people but cherished their own lives. But Knights of this order believed in reincarnation, that they will return in a radiant human shape. We don't know if their faith was true. Maybe they took their lives fearing retribution.
But why didn't Himmler commit that happy ritual? The explanation is very simple and logical. At that moment, Heinrich Himmler could not afford to be reincarnated. His face and identity were known to the whole world, and he didn't finish his earthly mission yet. He had to talk to Montgomery. He needed to be recognized. So he remained in his current human shape, a short, uninteresting person with shifty eyes, with a cyanide capsule hidden under his platinum pivot tooth. He put on civilian clothes and an eye patch, and together with his secretary Brandt and Dr. Gebhardt, betook himself to Montgomery in order to present his plans of saving the world from communism. On March 23rd, Himmler and his companions were arrested on the bridge near Lüneburg. The British military police sent them to Stalag 31, where they spent 2 days. Himmler had been interrogated twice. During the third interrogation on May 26, he removed the eye patch, put on glasses, and announced his name to Captain Sylvester, commander of the camp, demanding an urgent meeting with Montgomery. Secret police arrived and searched that strange person and found in his spectacle case 3 rolled sheets of paper, a short plan, 8 paragraphs. Number 1 read, "Urgently." Within 12 months, using results of German research to finish the nuclear project. As we know, by 1945, the Germans already had the dirty bomb. And to drop 2 bombs on Moscow and Leningrad. The last paragraph sounded rather circumspective. To postpone for a certain period of time the use of the SS as police force. My loyal army shall wait for the call of fate. End of the message. British intelligence men went away with that plan and didn't show up for several hours. In the evening, Colonel Murphy and 2 British doctors arrived. Ignoring Himmler's protestations, they searched him thoroughly. It was that kind of search which precedes elimination of prisoners. Himmler knew there would be no meeting with Montgomery. He was a war criminal now. That was the end. When the doctor said to open the mouth, Himmler bit at the cyanide capsule. His physical shell was later burnt down, his ashes scattered. The Black Order master had all reason to be happy. Suicide and burning sacrifice rituals necessary for reincarnation had been observed. And now he has only to wait for the call of fate, when again terror and hate will sweep over the world, summoning the recurrent man. What can stop Heinrich Himmler from returning? Only our memory and conscience can do that. The Wewelsburg Castle and thereabouts are notorious for a lot of anomalous phenomena. Strange enough, but the land around the castle was bought out by the biggest foreign countries. Behind this, according to German historians, loom foreign intelligence, who want to investigate into anomalies caused by experiments held here in the 1940s.